Welcome to the DTS Fitness Education Podcast. My name's Ben McDonald, and I am here with one of the nicest people.
I'm not paying any money for this. I'm not paying you any money for this, mate.
Michol Dalcourt. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, good to speak to you. And I wish we would have recorded half of what we recorded before you pressed record. That would have been perfect.
Yeah, do you know what? Yeah, but I was a little loose with the accent as well. You know what I mean? So it was. I'll slow it down a little bit now because it's being recorded. You know.
Yeah, but I got the backdrop now, so we're all good.
There you go. Preparation, my friend. Okay, so we're gonna jump straight in, my man. Straight in with question number one. We're talking about movement,
Yeah.
and this is like a massive area. So, why is movement so important for us as human beings?
That is a pretty broad question to start with, but a really good one because if we look at our structure, and if we can consider how our structure interacts with movement, with gravity, with our influences environmentally, everything is kind of wired to be able to accommodate and facilitate movement to some degree. If we remove that, and I was bedridden, God forbid, and I couldn't move, a lot of times decay in physiology rapidly accelerates, right? So that the stat, I think, for a broken hip is if you break your hip as an elderly person, chances are statistically you're dead in 2 years. And the reason for that is not because of the broken hip, it's because of lack of trust. In other words, the last time I moved and walked, I fell and hurt myself. Therefore, I've got a lot less confidence as it relates to movement. Therefore, I'm going to move less. Therefore, that is the cascade of, accelerated aging. So everything we do in relation to our structure and its function has some sort of connection to movement. That could be our skin, our nervous system, our viscera, the guts, our ocular motor system, muscle, fascia, bone, joints, all of those things have implications into movement. So it's important. And then, our response to stress is movement, right? So if you're under stress, you have a sympathetic dominant state. And the idea of sympathetic dominant state is fight or flight, which means you're either going to engage or you're going to get out of there, both of which require movement. So our natural response to stress is the body moving. But in our reality right now, our natural response to stress in many circumstances is not movement, right? So if you're my boss and I've got a deadline and you're on my back, putting pressure on me to get stuff done. And I know you're laughing because, it's a fun little kind of mental exercise here. But let's say that were true. In my environment right now, Ben, I gotta get the job done, get the project done on time, whatever the case may be. If it's stress at school for students, they're studying. That's actually the opposite of what the body needs in that environment, right? So what it requires is movement. What we do under that stress, right, when there's high cortisol, high epinephrine, norepinephrine, we don't move. And so what happens then is that there's a whole cascade of different hormones that kind of wash through our system, and they cannot be washed away with good quality and just good dosage of movement. So they accumulate, and then that leads to secondary considerations of health implications. So that's a big thing. And then the other thing why movement is so important is if we don't move well and we don't move enough, and if we age and the natural aging process takes over, movement equals discomfort or pain or something in that vein, so that we experience it all the time. Every time I move, I feel it, right? Mm-hmm. And every time we go intrinsic with our focus, we tend to move less well. And so all of these things kind of converge into this soup called a human experience. And largely it's predicated on movement. And our ability to move with ease will naturally increase our quality of life.
That was quite intense.
That's all I have time for. Thank you very much.
I was like, wow. He was going to be like,
yeah, but it really is. And in the fitness industry, we always look at movement as something we analyze, which is great, and something we engage in, which is great. And I think to us, the idea of fitness and performance needs to be indexed just as highly as health, right? So, you know, as IOM, we're a health and human performance company that's an applied company of health and human performance. So we look at kind of both things, right? If you've got a fitness goal and you want to run a certain distance in a certain time, great. But we always hold that equal to the idea of health. So we're always kind of looking at both ends of the spectrum, meaning can you be fit and perform well and also be healthy?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's key. I mean, the vision statement of DTS Fitness Education is longevity and pain-free living for everyone. So I think it's
100%. I love that. Yeah. And that should be, because that underscores everything we do, isn't it? You know, to a great degree. So yeah, that's great. I love that.
Fantastic, mate. That was, I like the, we got, when I said we're going to get right into it, we got right into it there, my mate. Okay. So, number 2, I'm ready. Number 2, if you could only use one movement assessment, what would it be and why?
Well, I'm going to give you a cop-out answer here a little bit, because there are myriad assessments that are out there. And they all have some validity. Others might have stronger test, retest reliability. But I think for any coach out there, any trainer out there, me included, my recommendation, my advice would be, we want to use the movement assessment that we're most familiar with. Because, and the reason why is because as we've got more familiarity and confidence, we're able to kind of see past all the noise. So let me give you an example. So let's say you had me, I know a gait assessment is an awesome assessment, right? And let's say you told me that the best assessment an individual can do is a gait assessment. Pretty hard to argue with that. But let's say I wasn't super familiar with a gait assessment. There's a lot of stuff going on, right? And so as I'm trying to look at this gait assessment, I might be seeing the hips doing a certain thing and the foot doing a certain thing. And I don't really know what that means, because to me, as a new neophyte to the gait assessment, this all is noise. It could be relevant noise, but it's kind of noisy, right? There's a lot of things going on. And if I'm not used to that, I don't know how to kind of wade through that noise. Whereas if you were very experienced in gait assessments, it wouldn't be that noisy. You'd be able to see, you know, the song within all the notes that are kind of appearing. For me, it might be more of a local assessment on the hip, or it might be a core stabilization assessment, something that I'm more familiar with. And so the best assessment that an individual can start with is one that they are familiar with. If you're not familiar with any, then get familiar with a simple assessment first and start to perform that with reps. And because with reps, confidence goes up, but you have the eye for certain things. I remember when I was in grade school, I learned French in grade 1 through 12. And my grade 4 teacher always said you had to have a French ear, right? But he said it in French, of course. But what he meant was understanding things in French and having that ear for the phrasing is different. So if I went to, Snakes Pass or Manchester, right? And I was going over to Leeds with you at the nightclub, and I had the English ear, right? That's different than the language that we speak in Canada or America, because you've got colloquial terms, you've got certain sayings, and you've got that kind of that ear for the dialect, right? And the same thing is true, I think, for these assessments. I would strongly recommend that you start with one that you're familiar with and really have it, get the ear for it, so to speak. And then once that's the case, you can bolt on other assessments. Because it's very hard for me to say that there is one overarching assessment that's going to be better than the other. That could be, but if I don't know how to look at things in the reference of that, whatever that assessment is, if it's a movement assessment, I'm not going to get, I think, the most out of it. And so, there are myriad assessments out there. Start with one, become familiar with it, understand it, have an ear for it, cut through the noise, and then that begins your journey of, okay, I can bolt on other assessments to it. And so that, I think, is going to be key for folks, because that's the entry point for them to make good decisions as it relates, in this case, to movement.
Nice, mate. I like it. I like it. So it's, it's just a matter of, do you know what? I've seen this. I've seen this. I know how this movement works, or I know how this assessment works. And when I see this generally is causation, or there's a correlation to X, Y, and Z. I like it, my mate.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a cop out though, but I like it.
It's true. It is. I will own that.
Brilliant, my mate. Okay. Which activity would give a client the biggest bang for their buck? So one that's maybe the easiest or most accessible, whatever you think.
Well, there's going to be two answers to that. The first one is, if we're looking at simply the health side of the equation, intermittent activities of daily living is by far the one that has the most impact on health, by far. So if we look at all-cause mortality, if we look at aspects of health and well-being, finding a way to move intermittently throughout the day is by far the best kind of antidote to aging, right? In terms of a movement style or, kind of an exercise or a strategy or protocol as it relates to movement. So that's going to be key. If we're thinking kind of gym landscape, I would say that movements that involve the entire body are going to have kind of the biggest bang for your buck. Because if we look at full body exercises, and just pick one, you can Turkish get up, you can do, whatever tool you want to use. If we're using full body exercises, then nervous system, joint actions, muscular system, energy system, utility is all going to be favorable if there is only that exposure, right? So if that's all we do, it's better that we do full body integrated movement than it would be isolated movement. Not to say that there's no value to an isolated movement, but the biggest bang for your buck, you're going to get a coordinated action through the nervous system if we're using full body integrated exercises. You're going to be able to coordinate chain reaction mechanics through the bony structures and the joints of the body. I think from a metabolic perspective, your fuel, your substrate utility is going to be one that can coordinate more fuel to more muscles, thereby activating more catalyzing enzymes within the metabolic system. So just biggest bang for your buck, a full body integrated movement pattern is always going to be kind of a better version if that's the only thing that you're going to do.
Great. And so you suggest frequency of movement as opposed to potentially duration?
Yeah, it's far better health-wise to be able to move intermittently throughout the day. So let's say you had 5 minutes, each hour, and that aggregated to, 60 minutes. I don't know my math, but 60 minutes total or 70 or 80 minutes total in a day, right? It's better to do that intermittently throughout the day than all together if we are looking at, all-cause mortality and health outcomes.
Excellent. No, that's great. That's great. And I love the way you just was like proper scientific. And then you were like, well, I don't know my maths. I was like, get out, get out. Brilliant. Okay. Boom. Where? Okay. If you could pick only one movement-based exercise, I think we might have answered this. So we had activity, and we're asking exercise. So I think
let me add to that. So activity would be activities of daily living, right? Find activities that you can do frequently throughout the day. For movements, two things. You can do integrated movements, right? But what I would also say is, implicit within the question, which is a great question, is, what's a great movement strategy, right? Pick an exercise. If I was to kind of broaden this, and I know I'm changing your questions here. I am the worst guest you've ever had by far.
Do it, lad.
I might say the strategy that we might take is one of variability, right? So let me paint this in the mind's eye to the listener. So if we're thinking about just sustainability, resiliency, and being unbreakable, right? And let's say being unbreakable underscores the young athlete that wants to do better. It underscores, the working years of our life, and I just want to, kind of accommodate more and do activities and play with my kids and live my life. Or at 87, being unbreakable to me might be, I just want to still live independently and not in a nursing home. That's unbreakable, and unbreakable underscores any one of those things, right? Obviously, the young person's going to move with stronger and faster and quicker, amplitude, most likely, versus the 87-year-old. But being unbreakable has this quality that is present in each of those archetypes. So what could also increase the capacity to be unbreakable is the notion of variability. So think about this. If we think about the aging process, it's really a cascade that follows this logic. A loss of adaptability leads to functional impairment, which leads to death. And that could be cell death in a certain area of the body. That could be system death, which is a system of a body shutting down, or it could be organism death, which typically follows, right? When something shuts down or dies. So that is the cascade of the aging process. A loss of adaptability leads to functional impairment, which leads to death. So if we were to intervene and say, let's make an unbreakable body, where we might intervene is in the first step, which is loss of adaptability. So if you and I want to train to be unbreakable, we want to be adaptable. And to be adaptable, we need to we need interference at a cell signal level. I know that that's not specific to the outcomes. And typically in the vein of exercise physiology, interference is a disruptor. We don't want it. What I might argue is, yes, we do. Because interference blocks certain things and forces our body to become more adaptable when things get in the way, so to speak. So some of the listeners may have heard of, even Wim Hof, who, the Iceman. I don't know if you've heard of Wim Hof, but he does a lot of cold extreme. He does a lot of breathing. And there's a lot of physiological kind of outcomes that ensue because of this. So if we look at what this individual does, they subject themselves to for most people, a very extreme environment that has not become extreme for him based on a dose response. So he's got a lot more adaptability than I would in that environment, right? So he's taught himself to bend to those perturbations, but not break, right? And a perturbation is basically a rattling or some sort of disruption to the system as an input. And cold would be that, right? And so what cold does is, there's cold shock proteins, your brown fat accumulates, and that's good for metabolic processes. When we mobilize brown fat, that releases norepinephrine from the adrenal glands. Norepinephrine decreases heart rate and increases oxygenation. That's a pretty cool thing, right? Where epinephrine increases heart rate and increases oxygenation. Norepinephrine decreases heart rate and increases oxygenation. Brilliant. So now I can decrease my heart rate, but increase oxygenation. That's good for health. That's good for holding your breath. That's good for all the things that we might see individuals be able to do because of perturbations, because of adaptability. So if we were thinking about breathing, and I told you, Ben, it's better that you breathe in 30 different ways. And you might say, isn't there one way to breathe? You breathe in and out. And the short answer is no, there's a variety of different ways we can breathe. We can breathe short and shallow. We can breathe slow in cadence. We can have ladder breathing that could be different ratios of breathing for exhale to inhale. We can do forced exhalation, inhalation. We can do percussive exhalation, inhalation. All of these things are different ways to breathe. And if you had 30 different ways to breathe, you would be more physiologically ready for anything, right? So if you were engaged in a bout of warming up and you were short, shallow breathing, your body can rev the system without losing oxygenation and without losing the more optimal blood pressure, because your baroreceptors and your chemoreceptors off your aortic arch would be used to that type of chemistry, would be used to that type of activation. So the broad answer to that is the best movement is variability at a certain point in time. In other words, try to vary the outcomes or your strategies for movement if you want a broad base of being unbreakable. Right now, specificity also has its place, right? So during bouts of periodization, specify, and then become a generalist at a certain point of your periodization as well, right? Have a broad base of movement literacy, because that'll help movement. That's going to help your nervous system. It's going to help your joints. It's going to help reduce the over-risk or overuse injury, the risk of overuse injury. And what it does do is it starts to breed this idea of interference so that I can be more adaptable. Because adaptability and versatility are the hallmarks, and resiliency are the hallmarks of longevity. If I'm resilient and adaptable, I live longer, usually.
100%, mate. I did the Oxygen Advantage course with Patrick McKeown, and it was 3 days on breathing, and it was like, I thought I was pretty good at it, and then I did a 3-day course. I was like, mate, I don't know how I've survived this long. You know what I mean? But I think as human beings, we're designed to be resilient. But now the way that we've structured the world is that we don't, a lot of the time, especially the Western world, we don't really call into play the need for the resilience, because we're all about comfort. You know, it's like, if it's hot outside, you can turn the air con up. If it's cold outside, you turn the heating on. You know, these for most people, there's food, there's X, Y, and Z. So I think that as we've lost a little bit of resiliency as far as that goes. And I think, Michol, we spoke a little earlier about longevity and pain-free living for everyone. And pain-free living is not just physical, it's mental as well. Do you see what I mean? And I think that when we lack that sort of discomfort a little bit, as far as physically, mentally we can start to search for it a little bit. Do you see what I mean? So I like the idea of building that resiliency back, like just putting things, like give yourself a little bit of stress, like the cold exposure, breath holds, all these different components that the body has to respond and adapt to. I think are quite cool to throw into your training.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Adaptability is, you know, like I said, adaptability and resiliency are the hallmarks of health. And, you know, part of that is also, you know, fellowship, right? If everybody had a friend like you, then, you know, they could bend without breaking, right? Or maybe not, but
Yeah, they wouldn't need any enemies. Let's put it that way.
No, but the idea of fellowship, right? Be able to lean on others and and the spirit of others and the help of others, I think, you know, is also this idea of well-being.
Oh, 100%, mate. Yeah. I think people, I think people tend to lose the focus a little bit, or the fitness industry tends to be a little elitist, you know, and sometimes, and I think people miss the point that fitness is total fitness. It can be financial fitness, spiritual fitness, social fitness, like all of these different components play into total fitness. And I think just focusing on the physical component can tend to let people down. So I agree with you 100%, mate, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, good.
Beautiful. Okay. Ooh, question number 5. We're at question number 5 already. What are your top tips for, you'll like this one, what are your top tips for movement improvement?
I like the breakdancing in there, by the way. That was a good addition. So if we look at the ability to enhance movement quality, I think really it comes down to, you know, obviously there is a number of different factors that would play into this. But for me, some of the things that jump top of mind would be the idea of joint strength and motor control. And that is very important because, in a lot of cases, you know, as we move around, as we play and live our lives, we have momentum forces, we've got environmental forces that drive body actions. And what can really improve movement quality is the idea of joint strength and motor control at a joint. And, you know, you're in the Toronto area, and even, you know, there are a number of different individuals that look at joint control, right? And these individuals, I think, are onto something from the perspective that if I can create a afferent-efferent communication between sensory and motor, and I can direct that at a joint, right? Or a series of joint segments. And I can create control, motor control, sensory feedback, motor control. What that does, it will typically diminish the perceived threat of instability or perceived threat that goes along with movement if I lack motor control all in. And to do that at joints is a very simple way in order for me to aggregate the complexity on top of that, right? So if I look at joint strength, then I look at motor control of a joint, then I can look at gross movement patterning, right? I can do exercises and whatever I do in the gym or in a training construct. That flow is actually one that diminishes the threat of the individual. So, taking into account a program, what we might do is we might say, all right, if a person has a goal, a fitness goal, it's not as if we as a coach might take them through 3 months of, isolated motor control because they want a goal that's attained. And most of the time it could be aesthetic, right? It could be some sort of performance goal. And so they want to see some value built on the achievement of that goal by virtue of doing something that looks and kind of smells and tastes like what they want, right? And so what we might do is to say in their programming, we might take days where it's working out and we're doing, a traditional workout that might look very similar to what you see in any gym. And then in their work-in days, what we might do is a structured work-in where they're doing devoted efforts towards joint strengthening and motor control so that it replenishes the system. And what it does is allows them the opportunity to have a day off, if you will, because it's not that strenuous, or it doesn't have to be that. So you can make it strenuous, but it doesn't have to be that strenuous. But they're taking time to build the building blocks of their body, right? So they can control joints, they can control movement at joints, and that can be their work-in days that can support their ability to work out, right? And by workout, they can go for a run, they can do a weight session in the gym, what have you, but they are taking time to do prophylactic exercises, right? Remedial exercises that help bolster their ability to move and their quality of movement. And so what we do is we undulate between what we call these workout days and these work-in days. And these work-in days could be recovery-based or joint strengthening days that support the workout days. Because what we are then doing is just building a stronger infrastructure for our body to be able to move. And there are many examples out there of, kind of joint strengthening and motor control. I mean, FRC is one of them that's in your neck of the woods. Yeah. And they do a wonderful job. They really do a wonderful job of, looking at how to increase motor control and joint strengthening in certain aspects of the body.
Yeah, I think I did the course with Andrea Ospina, and I thought it was great. I thought it was great, and it's dead sexy because it's like pails and rails and cars. You know what I mean? It's like it's super cool, but it was great.
It's smart. It's a smart way to do it because it sticks, right? We're talking about it and it's sticky, right? So it's anchor points or theories that people can anchor to. So, I think what he's done is infinitely clever, and I commend him for doing it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, mate, and I think that is like utilizing that full range of motion at the joint, but also having the ability to control it. Because I mean, flexibility, great, but can you use that range? Do you know what I mean? Are you proprioceptively aware it wherever you are in space and time? So yeah, I thought it was cool stuff,
Yeah, and what we do is with our Viper Pro tool, what we do is we do concurrent when we're ready for it. We do concurrent mobility, stability, and strength training at the same time. So to us, it's not mobility training. It is mobility in a certain range of motion, stability in that given range of motion, and strength training at the same time. Because what you earn in terms of range of motion, or what your body allows in terms of range of motion, you have to earn it. And once you earn it, you own it. And by owning it, I mean the nervous system has complete safety because it's the one dictating the motion, because it needs stability, it needs strength at the end range, because you've got a mass that you're manipulating, right? So it is mobility training, but it also is stability training, and it also is strength training at the end ranges. And so your nervous system now owns it because it has to facilitate motor control to be able to get you there and get you back. So that decreases, or it removes the critical delay. And by a critical delay, what we mean biomechanically is that when you find yourself in an odd position and your body guards itself for that moment in time, that's a critical delay. And for the non-exerciser or the fitness enthusiast, that could mean stepping off a curb that I didn't realize was there, losing timing and motor control, and blowing up my ACL in a non-contact way. For the elite athlete, a critical delay means I'm either in the play or out of the play, because that one grab, I'm out of the play, because my body grabbed itself to stabilize and corral itself. And now the play continued and I couldn't react to it because my body for a moment in time froze, if you will, to guard itself. And then the play passed me by. So in either case, it is egregious, right? One of them is an injury. The other one is, I missed the play and the other team, had an advantage. So in either case, I think, those ideas of building capacity within joints and building stability, strength to reduce threat are always going to be something that we do.
Great, mate. And I remember when I did the, you're preaching to the converted here, brother, because it was like, I think, how long would it be now? Probably about 12, maybe 10, 12 years ago. I did the...
We're not that old, like 3 months ago.
No, I was like 5. I went and I did the Viper course. I think it was at Loughborough University. I went and I did it. Flipping at mate, and I walked in and I was like, okay, and I just thought, I'll use this 20 kg one. And I thought it's only 20 kg.
I know. We've got a 32 kg now.
You got a 32 kg now?
Yeah, it's not strong. It's not heavy if you're going to linearly lift it, but it's impossible if you take it off your midline.
Well, that's what I thought. I walked in and was like, it's only 20 kg. And then we did a few, I was like, I think I had it all told for less than 5 minutes. If I say 5 minutes, I'm bigging myself up. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I put it down and I picked up a light one.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Fantastic, mate. Fantastic. And so if anybody's interested in like the Viper Pro, the Institute of Motion stuff, this is all going to be in the podcast description. We'll have all the links in there, so you can just literally click on it, go and have a look, check it all out. Fantastic stuff. Okay. Question number 6. When it comes to movement, what areas tend to get overlooked?
Well, I would say there's plenty, but I would say some that are important are eyes, ears, and breath. And I don't mean breath just by virtue of getting oxygen in and out. I mean using breath to deeply stabilize the trunk. So let me actually start there. So if I was to go into the fitness industry and say, hey, what areas of the body are really important to activate prior to a workout? Most of the answers are glutes and core, and especially glutes, right? And so I'd say, okay, well, give me a glute exercise that's pretty good. And there are many, and one of them might say a glute bridge. So then the question goes, okay, if you got an individual who is relatively new to movement or not a great mover, but certainly exposed to movement in their history, if you get them to do a glute bridge, what tends to happen? And some of the responses, many of the times, would be, well, they feel it more in the hamstrings, or they feel it more in the lower back. And the result of that for a coach would be, all right, well, I can either give them a different movement, or I can try to coach the glutes to get more involved. And so if I'm being honest with myself, I'd say, well, if I've done that in the past, what would the response be? And, the more detailed you get with, okay, try to activate the glutes, try to really, pick up the glutes and activate the pelvis and these posterior muscles of the hip. And the more we get detail with our description, the more it's lost on individuals, particularly if they're new to movement skill, right? So if we look at motor learning and cueing and coaching, even with our friend Nick Winkleman, he would say, particularly in the beginning, right, external, simple, and descriptive cues are probably going to go further than internal and detailed cues, unless you're a really exquisite mover. And so by getting more internal with the body, that's more noise to a person who's a neophyte. And the result of that is the glutes don't contract and the hamstrings are cramping now, right? And so that didn't really, solve the problem. So if we took that analogy and I said, all right, glutes are important. We can have a variety of different ways to organize the glutes to fire. How about the core, And then people would argue that, yeah, the core is just as important. And you can maybe make an argument that the core is even more important to make sure it's engaged. But what we might say is activating the core requires two things. It's really about how to turn the muscles on and off. Because if they don't turn off at the right time, your risk of injury just goes up, right? So activation really should be two things. Can we turn them on quick and can we turn them off quick? Because if they can, then there's zero threat and your body is ready to move, right? If I walk on ice, now that you're in Canada, you know all about this. If you walk on ice, everything stiffens up because of threat, right? And I don't care what we think about to relax, our body's 2 steps ahead of us and is not going to relax because the more immediate risk is falling. And it doesn't matter how much we want to, kind of think about relaxation, we're not going to get there, right? Because there is a threat that the nervous system is exposed to, then it's going to keep everything tight. And for those that have walked on ice, we know that. So if the idea of turning on and off of a muscular system is important, how do we do that? And if we approach this to the core, how do we do that? Because just like people want to activate the glutes consciously to get them going, muscles are task driven. And so they require a task to authenticate themselves. So if I was to say to a room of fitness professionals, all right, all of you can contract your glutes, awesome. How many of you can contract your multifidus, which is, obviously a paraspinal muscle that links adjacent segments together? I would submit that very few of those fitness professionals would put their hands up and say, I can consciously control my multifidus. I can't. And so the purpose is not necessarily to activate things consciously. The idea is to create a task whereby we can activate the trunk in this example. And accessory muscles of breathing are primarily stability muscles. So what we have found is if we do forced inhalation and forced exhalation, and if we do percussive inhalation and exhalation, those alone have been game changers for us. Because if I had you breathe all your air out of your lungs, and when you thought you were done, I said, hey, there's a, whatever motivates you, there's $1 million, there's a new Ferrari, there's a new puppy, whatever motivates you. If you can breathe 2 more seconds of air out of your lungs when you basically are done, that last 2 seconds of trying to blow the last little smidgen of air out of your lungs, where are you going to feel it? You're going to feel it in your intercostals. You're going to feel it in your TVA and all 4 layers of the abdominal wall. You're going to feel it in your pelvic floor, right? Which is not the respiratory diaphragm, but your pelvic diaphragm. You're going to feel it in some of the paraspinal muscles. These are all deep core stabilization muscles, and they all fire together because they're all wired together when we're at the limit of exhalation. The cool part about that is that spares the diaphragm. So a lot of times we think about core, and we think of breathing, we think diaphragm, 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 diaphragm. What happens if we spare the diaphragm? In other words, it's not exposed to exhalation. It doesn't fire. It fires during inhalation. So if we forcefully exhale, we spare the diaphragm, we create more hoop tension in the 4 layers of the abdominal wall because the diaphragm is not contracting, and that anchors your glute and opposite lat through the thoracolumbar fascia. That's better to stabilize the pelvis. For those that engage in high intensity functional training, because they're breathing so much, their diaphragm is going with a lot of input. And what that tends to do is it overrides the TVA and other muscles because of preferential recruitment. And what we find with those individuals is because they don't have as much hoop tension, the glute and lat can't anchor to the thoracolumbar fascia as well, we increase the risk of peripheral injuries of other muscles like hamstrings, because they are the ones that are called upon to stabilize the pelvis, and they're not ideal for that. So in a certain sense, we want to create inhalation and exhalation to get accessory breathing muscles to fire, because in both cases, inhale and exhale, they both stabilize deep trunk. And so we can actually pre-position certain things, right? And we overlay this into certain other techniques. If we're doing stretching techniques for the spine, like Aldoa's, breathing techniques on top of them will reinforce stability. If we're using prepositions like type 1 or type 2 motions of the thoracic spine, and we add forced inhalation, forced exhalation, we are now increasing the capacity for the trunk to be able to do its job better and stabilize in these uncommon positions. And by far, in protocols of warming up, these have been game changers for individuals. And what it also does is it shrinks the time it takes to warm a person up or to properly prepare them, because you're overlaying a couple of different things together and creating, let's say, stiffness and then relaxation, particularly if you're doing percussive breathing. And you're doing that at the same time. So you're basically stacking certain things, and that avails more time because it's a shorter amount of time to warm up. So you have a longer amount of time to work out. If your warm-ups are taking a longer and longer segment of time and you want to shorten those up, these are really good strategies to be able to do that.
Nice. Nice.
So in other words, you can shrink a 15-minute warm-up into a 10 or 5-minute warm-up if you want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I think when you sort of relay that, when you look at like, my background is combat sport. So that is purely relaxation, boom, tension, whoop, relaxation. If you do not have that, pop, 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 like have the ability to relax, tension, relax, then it may like you can't be like a flaming robot. You're going to get taken to the cleaners, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. During our excitation drills, we hold a position and let go quick. We hold a position, let go quick. So the idea of excitation is on and off quick. So we're teaching in our warm-ups, we're teaching the motor system, motor control to actually turn off quick.
Nice.
Because off is slow and on is slow and off is quick. I'll say that again. On is slow and off is quick. And you know this from from your martial arts background, right? Your MMA and your fighting background, that the more I'm nervous, the more I've got anxiety, right? The more everything's on, the slower I am. So the 100%. Idea is, can I turn off quick? And that is to do with performance and also good movement. If I'm swinging a golf club as a recreational golfer, off quick will actually probably save my back over time.
Yeah. No, I like it, man. I like it, mate. I like it. That, yeah, I tell you what, Michol, you give, like, I'm just thinking, oh, yeah, so what's your tip for movement improvement? Oh, just like stretch a bit and then, you know what I mean? You're like, ooh, right in. I love it, brother. Okay. Beautiful. So question number 7, my man, what has been going on with you? What is new with Michol Dalcourt?
Okay, let's, thanks for asking that question too. So obviously Viper Pro is the new iteration of our product. So for those that have seen it, there's a new design. The utility and the programming we have taken and kind of run with the last 2 years. And our goal is really to shine a light on how and why, right? Why is this theory? Why is, the concepts behind this relevant? And, for us, it's all to do with this idea of, farm strength, if you will. And that's the kind of the easy way to say this, right? If you took a gym kid and they wrestle a farm kid and you were a betting person, where would your money be? And, 9 times or 10 times out of 10 times, the answer is on the farm kid. And then the next question is why? Well, they kind of interact with mass very differently than we do in the gym. And this is not to suggest gym things bad, because gym exercise and protocols have made many people bigger, stronger, faster, which is awesome. All we're saying is, as we index and consider all these gym things, let's also consider what made farm kids strong too. And so that is vector variability. That's taking submaximal loads and moving it with different angulations because of its effects on motor control, because of its effects on the structure of joints, skin, fascia, all of these aspects of vector variability create what's called shape stability. And shape stability makes us more stable. And when we're more stable, we can harness more force, particularly in odd positions, as if you were wrestling, which advantage, farm kid. But if you took a farm kid in the gym, advantage gym kid. So, both of them have efficacy and both of them have validity. We just want to be able to consider both. And so with Viper Pro, that's what we're doing. A lot of it is leading by example, leading by education. And right now on our Instagram and Facebook page, which is Viper Pro, at Viper Pro, we're doing 28 days of female specific programming. So we have a couple of folks on our team, Gigi being one of them. She's doing her PhD thesis on the female menstrual cycle. And so what we're doing is, here's 28 days, 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, and here's what needs to be considered as you're going through the menstrual phase, if you're going through the follicular phase or ovulation or the luteal phase. What do we need to do in order for us to really glean the right information so that we can take advantage of that undulating chemistry that is an advantage for the female chemistry? And this is near and dear to my heart because I've got a 9-year-old daughter. And, you know, as odd as this may sound, it sounds odd to even say this, but we're in a society where we don't talk about this. We're in a society where it's underrepresented, right? Everybody trains everybody like they are 25 to 45-year-old males. Why? Because that's where the research is, right? But the other communities that we serve are underrepresented, right? And so, you know, as a 9-year-old, she and I have talked about her menstrual cycle that she's going to get in somewhere between the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. And she is completely empowered because she knows every aspect of what's going to come. And what's cool about my experience with her is the more I told her and the more I was comfortable telling her, the more questions she had. Now, I would highly doubt she's going to remember all the physiology that I taught her at 9. But here's what I would say is that she won't remember all that, but what she will remember is if I ask Dad a question about it, he is entirely comfortable giving me the answer. And if he's comfortable, maybe I can be comfortable too, right? And so that's hugely empowering to her. And it's been hugely empowering to have leaders on our team like Gigi that have brought the academia to us so that we can run with it, right? And we want to have those powerful voices at the table so that we can actually understand what we are doing. So that's happening over the next 28 days. We're super excited about it. On the IOM front, we're doing a lot in the vein of, because as a company, we are an applied health and human performance company. So what that means is when we look at human performance, and that could be elite sports for the youth, or it could be, I want to live independently at 87, that's human performance, right? I want to live well. The health piece has to match, right? So can I be healthy and fit and perform at a certain level? Those have to match all the time. And that's what we are as a company. We are an applied health and human performance company. So when we look at the trends of fitness, and you know, fitness is very trend-based. It's like fashion, right? It's very trend-based. So right now, some of the trends are high intensity exercise and a bunch of others. And there's a lot of merit to it. And if we put our fitness and performance hat on, we'd say, this is unbelievable, right? We are going through a certain pathway. It's opening up, you know, a cascade of different hormones, of growth factors, of mTOR, of all these things are going to make me bigger, stronger, faster. Hallelujah. I love acidosis and I love high intensity exercise. But if we look at the dose response, you know, what mTOR also does as a signaling pathway is it also creates more autophagy and ages the body quicker. What it also does is it affects inflammation and inflammatory cytokines, particularly IL-6, which is in the short term immunosuppressing. So if you look at that now from the health perspective, you'd say, well, it's good, but if I dose too much with high intensity, what am I doing to my inflammation and those markers? What am I doing to the immune system? And what am I doing to my longevity if I am overreaching too much? And so that's the difference between exclusively looking at the performance and fitness side versus looking at all sides. And that's what we want to do. Right? We want to create a scenario where individuals can either program or consider health and human performance. And once they do, then it gives life to the idea that a client or a customer can do what they want for as long as they want to do it. Versus I used to run and I loved running, but you know, I had to stop because I had an injury, or I used to love golf, but now my back aches, or I used to do this, but I had to stop because of, we want to be able to set index equally on the health and human performance side. And so because of that, IOM has been engaged in some education. We've created an operating system through our 4 Qs. We're actually working with a government in Asia looking at prevention health for their entire population. So we've partnered with this government to look at population health, because there's 3 prongs to our business. There's the fitness side, there's the performance side, and there's the health coaching side, which is, I'm going to say, in the healthcare sector, right? But it's not on the health management of reaction care medicine. It's on the prevention side of the ledger. And it's all about prevention and delaying and offsetting malady, but within the auspices of the healthcare system. So because of that, we are engaged in a lot of different things, but to us, they all anchor to the applied health and human performance. We are an applied health and human performance company. We seek solutions and strategies in education and future building on what that actually looks like as an operating system. So, we're busy, and, we're excitedly so, because I think it gives us something different to say and something that everybody wants, right? Which is this idea of health and human performance.
Fantastic, my mate. Well, it sounds like you're pretty busy, mate.
I'll tell you this, we've got 24 people on our team, and they all have something in common. They lead with strong hearts, and they've got good minds too. So we're super blessed. I mean, these individuals are lights out.
Well, mate, I can definitely attest to that, brother. Some of the nicest people in the industry. So excellent. Like I said earlier, all the links are going to be in the description, podcast description, so anybody can click on them and get there and check all your stuff out. Now is the time for the question. I love the way you're looking at your sheet there. You're like, what's he going to say? The question that matters, my friend. The question that matters.
Wow.
Who would win a fight between a great white shark and a saltwater croc, and why?
Okay, you ready? You ready for my answer?
Ready.
Okay. So the answer is, it's going to depend. So here's why. So environment dictates behavior, right? That is a fundamental tenet of biology. And I think it's an overriding law of nature as well. So here's the answer. It would depend, because environment dictates behavior. So with that, if it was in deep water, I think the shark would win. If it's in shallow water, I think the croc would win, because they are more used to that environment and they can self-organize better in those particular environments. Because at the end of the day, environment dictates behavior, and that supersedes any of their abilities if those abilities are removed because of an environment they're not as used to. So that's my answer. I'm sticking to it.
That's brilliant. So that's the second question that you've ducked out of. No problem. Don't make you a bad person.
You know what's funny? I'm glad you saw right through that and saw that it was a cop-out answer number 2 for me.
Brilliant. Michol, I cannot tell you, brother, how much I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. So, I'm going to finish it with a goal, Michol Dalcourt!
Hey, listen, I got to say, I love your spirit and your enthusiasm. And, to me, that just brightens our day. So we need more of that, especially right now with what we're dealing with. So, yeah, I appreciate you. And it was nice to spend the hour and a bit with you. And I look forward to more. So I just want to say this to everybody. I hope you're safe, and your family and friends and loved ones are safe during this time too. And I know it's difficult, but it's fun to be able to engage in these types of conversations. So I appreciate your time too, Ben.
We appreciate you, brother. Thank you very much, Michol. I'll catch up with you soon, my mate.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Did you know that DTS Fitness Education are actually an education company? That's right. So if you like what you see and you would like a little more, go to dtsfitnesseducation.com and check out our live and online courses.